There's just something about freshly baked bread. Maybe the smell or the imagination, a thickly slice of bread with melting real butter. Add an open fire and bread baking without stoves and others somewhere in the bush, woods, or in a camping site. This makes it a sure experience of enjoyment. There's sometimes a thin line between success and failure, where a simple technical point makes all the difference. Today we're going to discuss some of the points to help you to get it better every time. The pots that I use for baking bread is normally a flat bottom cast iron pot. This is a number 10 or a 3-liter pot. I will also advise anybody if they want to start and buy cast iron pots to start with a 3-liter. You can do so much and make sure it's a flat bottom. You can use it on gas or on your stove plates. You can put it in the stove. It just handles very, very well. When buying a new pot, make sure about the lid. You can see it got a rim on the side. So when you put your coals on, it will keep it on the top. Other important part is this pot is more or less good enough to handle 1 kg of dough. When you make your own dough, you need to take a piece off about the size of your fist and take that off. If you buy some dough in South Africa, most of the supermarkets sell dough, and that's normally 800 grams. And this pot make you more or less a standard loaf of bread, just in a round shape. Just make sure the dough must be about a bottom third of the pot up to maybe half, but not higher than that. Otherwise you struggle with the lid. It will push when it starts to rise, it will push the lid off or it won't seal properly. This is a bigger pot that I use for double bread or 2 loaves of bread, more or less. The volume of this pot is 4.7 liters, just under 5 liters. And it takes 2 kgs of dough with ease, or 2 packets of the supermarket dough. You put it in and just press it down. And in this pot, you can go up to half with the dough. It's not as sensitive on the lid rise as on the smaller pot. Okay, over years and experience over years, I determined that a brick on its side, about 100 and 210 4 inches high, is about the ideal height to put your pot on. I use bricks. It's simple. Everybody's got a spare brick or 2 laying around. So you can use that, but never put your pot directly on coals. You will burn the pot, the bread at the bottom, and it will be of no use. So I normally use 2 bricks. You can put 2 pieces of angle iron or something on, or a grit on top, and put your pot on that. That just give you the 100% height for the coals and everything. Here you can see I've got 2 pieces of metal, stainless steel, that I use in many ways, but that's ideal for a. You can even take 2 stones or rocks or whatever you can get when you camp. But that's more or less the size you want to, or the height that you want to be away from the coals. You can also use a tripod. They're normally a bit high, but you can use that. There's no problem. You must just look at your coals and make sure you've got enough coals. I use here a piece of grit, pot on top, ideal. And now you can even put some coals on the sides around if you need to, because that's a critical part with a pot bread where you struggle to get it baked and have a crust on. And if you don't have that right, you struggle to get it out of the pot, because most people put only coals underneath and on top, and then you struggle. But I'll show you that. Remember, never put your pot directly on the coals. The other important part is start your fire or make your fire where you're going to make your pot or your pot bread, because you need to heat the area. I see a lot of people make their fire in their fire chimneys like this. Mine is a bit old, but they put it away from everything and then later drop the coals in. It's not working. You need to preheat the area where you're going to make your pot bread, especially in winter time. And also make sure when you do this on the ground where it's wet or cold, the ground temperature is too low, it will just take the heat away from the coals before you even start to bake the bread. Critical. After you preheated your pot, you make sure to grease it either with butter or with oil, and do it properly. Every corner, make sure it's 100% greased, as well as with the lid. The lid is as important because sometimes the dough rises up to the lid, and when you don't do that, when you pick up the lid, you will take off half of the bread, the top part of the bread. So that's critical. As I mentioned earlier, the dough was 1 kg of dough. And I'm going to take a piece off the size of my fist, the size of the pot. Otherwise we struggle with that. And then you just push it down. I need some more off. Still too high. As I mentioned, not higher than half of the pot. I try this with half a pot. You will see it's about half the bottom of the pot that we cover. Here our briquettes is right. You can see it's white all over. Why briquettes? It's just something that hold the heat better than any other coals. On a later stage I'll show you how to use amber and coals also to bake a bread. You can see pot in the middle. I'll move that a bit in, but you will see it's not totally underneath the bottom of the pot. I like the sides to heat up. As I mentioned, it's critical. And then I put coals on the lid. Normally more coals, or more or less. It depends on your day of the temperature. Wind also play a role. So, but normally more coals on the lid, for the simple fact that your bread is at the bottom part of the pot and you need to rise it to the top. So you put heat on the top. You can also put some coals on the sides of the stones if you want. That is just the part that I took off the bread. It's more or less a bit more than a fist on a kg dough. Okay, most bread will normally bake for an hour, and it's critical for every 50 minutes, or more or less every 50, to turn your whole pot a quarter turn, as well as your lid. You also turn that a quarter turn. There you are, every 50 minutes, 4 times in our baking time. Our bread is done. I use a knife just as a leverage to get it out of the pot. There you can see a bread, 100%, no burning marks. Nice and even, the crust all over, bottom, top, 100%. Use the basics and you will bake bread like this every time. Enjoy it and try it, it's worth it.